Hi guys, it is me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to this Practice 1 and Practice 2 review for the Hungarian Grand Prix. And how are we all doing? I know I've took basically a 3-day break from YouTube despite uploading the preview for the Hungarian Grand Prix, but yeah, I'm pumped for this weekend. But let's go through the results of practice. So this is the top 10 in Practice 1. Daniel Ricciardo was fastest, from Sebastian Vettel second, Verstappen was third, Raikkonen fourth, Hamilton fifth, Bottas sixth, Grosjean in seventh, Hülkenberg eighth but did have a problem, Sainz in ninth, and Kevin Magnussen in 10th place. And then P11 to P20 in P1 was Gasly, in P11 then Alonso, Hartley, Stroll doing well, Ocon in 15th, Van Dorn 16th, Perez 17th, Giovinazzi, of course, a Ferrari driver in 18th, Sirotkin 19th, and Marcus Ericsson in 20th place. So that was practice 1. But then when we came to practice 2, it did change. Sebastian Vettel, fastest of all by just under a tenth of a second, from Max Verstappen in second, Ricciardo third, Raikkonen fourth, Hamilton fifth, and Bottas sixth. Again, Mercedes are not doing well. Grosjean in P7, then Carlos Sainz is 8th, Gasly doing well in 9th, and Esteban Ocon in 10th place. And then P11 to P20, here you go, is Perez in P11, then Alonso again in 12th, Magnussen 13th, not doing well, Hülkenberg 14th, because of the issue he had in practice 1, he didn't go out, I think, for the first half an hour in practice 2, so was struggling for track time. Then Hartley 15th, Ericsson 16th, Leclerc in 17th, Lance Stroll 18th, Stoffel Van Dorn down in 19th, and Sergei Sirotkin in 20th place. So those are the results of practice 1 and practice 2. But now let's go through the teams and see how they did. So first off, Mercedes, I think it's clear to see they have the third fastest car. I don't even think when they turn it up in qualifying they're going to be able to get ahead of the Red Bulls, because, and even the drivers have said this car around this track is difficult to drive, and it's not a surprise. The Mercedes car has never been good at high aero tracks, and I think realistically going into qualifying and the Grand Prix, I expect a third row start, and if there's no retirements from both Ferraris or both Red Bulls, then it's going to be 5th and 6th, I'm afraid. They're not quick. They're not quick at all. And now, let's go into Ferrari, who I have to say are a lot faster than I thought they would be. I thought they would be second fastest, and I thought when it came to qualifying they would be close, but not close enough. But right now, I would have to make them favourites for pole position and possibly the front row. Because we know on a Friday, they tend to turn down the engine and they go for one lap pace, but they don't properly turn it up in all areas. And for them today in practice 2, to be leading by just under a tenth, that shows that that Ferrari car is supremely fast. So right now, Ferrari are favourites for pole position. But of course, there could be rain tomorrow, so that could affect whether they get pole or not. But if it's dry, I don't see anyone other than this man getting pole position. I don't see it, because the Ferrari is just too quick, I think, compared to the Red Bull. And talking of Red Bull, let's go through them now, who are quick. They're definitely quick and are competitive for pole and the race win. But they're not as competitive as I thought they would be. I thought Red Bull would have at least a quarter of a second in their pocket over Ferrari and Mercedes if Mercedes were better than we thought they were, but they're not. But it appears that Ferrari just have a fast enough car compared to the Red Bulls. And if you actually look at the sector times, if you compare the Red Bull to the Ferrari in Sector 1, it is not even close. Not even close. In the second and third sector, it's all about Red Bull. But in the first sector, Ferrari are gaining so much on the Red Bulls. So, yeah, I think when it comes to a pole position or a front row or a race win, they have a lot of work to do. And I don't think they'll be able to get pole in the drive. But again, if it does rain in qualifying, then I think they will get pole position. But they need to really pray for some rain there, because it's not looking as good as I think Red Bull thought it would be. So not looking good for Red Bull there. And let's now go through the midfield teams and see how they did. McLaren, about where I expected. Not in the top 10. Not miles away from the top 10 with Fernando Alonso, but not really competitive with, you know, the Haas and the Renaults and even at times the Toro Rossos. So, yeah, McLaren just look as, not as fast, I'd say, as slow as I expected them to be. Stoffel Van Dorn in P19. I just have to say about Van Dorn, if he has another weekend like Hockenheim, I think Van Dorn is on his way out of McLaren, because his performances since Canada have been so poor. And yes, the car is poor, and I agree that the car, if it was better, we would see a better Stoffel Van Dorn, and there are issues with his car fundamentally compared to Fernando's. But since Canada, again, he's been so poor. Before then, in the first 6 races, I thought he did well, but since Canada, we haven't seen anything really from him, so he has to improve, because if he doesn't, he will not be at McLaren for 2019. There's no doubt about that. On to Renault, who, in terms of pace, I think look good. Maybe not as good as I thought they'd be, but they still look good. But for Nico Hülkenberg, it was not good, because after setting a lap, which in practice 1 put him in 8th place, his car broke down. Not good at all, and then he missed some track time in practice 2 and ended up in 14th, basically because, yeah, it affected the car and just his track time, so that is not good for him. But with Carlos Sainz in practice 2 up in 8th place, at least that shows that the Renault, when it's working, is maybe not best of the rest, but definitely solidly in that top 10, no doubt about it. So despite this issue, Hülkenberg can still be confident, because the Renault does look competitive for some solid points. Now let's go on to Force India, who are looking about where I expected them, I guess. I mean, slightly better in some areas, but yeah, I'd say where they are right now is about where I expected. And I think, yeah, going into the race, it's not a bad position to start from if they're, say, 11th and 13th. But when it comes to qualifying, I think clearly they're slower than the Haas's and the Renaults. So when it comes to qualifying, I think they'll both be going out in Q2. Maybe one of them going out in Q1, because Force India's qualifying performance as of late has been quite poor. But in the race, they might be able to nick a point if they get some luck, but yeah, it's just looking like a mediocre weekend, I'd have to say, from Force India's point of view. Now let's go on to Williams, who, well, in practice 2, they were where we expect them to be, but in practice 1, Lance Stroll was in 14th, but then dropped back, so maybe there's a glimmer of hope. But I don't think, realistically, there is. I think Williams will line up on the back row, because this track does not suit that car at all. So we'll move on from Williams and go on to Toro Rosso, who you may be surprised by their pace, but I'm not, because Toro Rosso have always tended to go well here. I mean, last year, I think with Sainz, they qualified in P9, I think. I may be wrong on that, but I think he was in the top 10. And then in the race, he finished in 7th. So this is not really a surprise. Toro Rosso have always gone well here. And when it comes to qualifying, I don't think they'll get into the top 10, but I definitely think they'll be, say, P11, P12, P13, that area. Because the car is definitely quick enough and looks good around this track to be in that sort of area. And then when it comes to the race, I think, as I said in my preview, which, by the way, if you've not checked out, go and check that out, I wouldn't be surprised if they scored points because their car in terms of race pace is actually quite decent. So yeah, not looking too bad there for Toro Rosso, and hopefully they do score points on merit, if you know what I mean, because in Germany with Hartley, they didn't deserve to score points in terms of the pace of the car because the car was quite slow in Hockenheim. And now let's go on to Haas, who I have to say are definitely quicker than I thought they would be. I thought they would be maybe just inside the top 10 or just outside the top 10, because the last time we came to a high downforce track, which was Monaco, they were so poor. They were debatably worse than Williams at times. But here, they look good. You'd have to say with Romain Grosjean, they look absolutely fantastic. But what is this down to in terms of this good performance so far at a high downforce track? I think it's down to two things. One, after Monaco, they brought a big upgrade package for Canada, and since then, at the French Grand Prix, Austrian, British and German, they've been best of the rest. There's no doubt about that. But another thing which has improved their performance and is also improved Sauber's, which we'll get onto in a minute, is this new power unit that both those teams have, which is said to give them a 30 to 40 horsepower was the rumour that I've seen. And if that is true, then that is a massive boost to Haas, because if you compare that to Renault, the Haas power unit is way better than the one that Renault have. So that is going to be a massive boost to them in terms of trying to catch Renault and finish in fourth. I still don't think Haas will finish fourth in the Constructors, but that is a massive boost for them if they're going to anyway. So hopefully for them, that does give them some kind of boost going forward. And last of all is Sauber. And again, that upgrade on the power unit side should be making a difference for Sauber. Maybe not this weekend, because this track doesn't favour, highly powerful power units, because, just look at Mercedes. They're clearly the third fastest team behind Red Bull. But once we get to Spa and Monza, I think the Saubers, the Haases are just going to fly. So, yeah, that's going to make a massive difference for them. But for this weekend for Sauber, they don't look quick. They do not look quick. I think the best they can get in qualifying and the race is 13th, 12th, something like that. And if they're going to get points, they need luck, because that car is nowhere near quick enough to get into the top 10 in qualifying or the race. It's just not aerodynamically good enough. But I'm sure once we get to later in the season, it will improve on that area. But just right now, it's not looking good. Now, before we go to the Q&A, I want to just let you guys know of one thing before we get into the Q&A, which I will be doing from now on in these live reviews of practice and the qualifying watch-along or race watch-along, is I'm going to update you as to what is going on in F2. Qualifying has happened today in F2. It happened about, half an hour after practice 2. These are the results. So Sergio Sette Camara getting his first pole position, I believe, in F2. Jack Aitken in P2. Then Nick De Vries in P3. George Russell is P4. You've got Lando Norris P6, so that's not good for him, because of course Russell and Norris are in a massive championship fight, which I have to say George Russell looks like he's likely to win right now, because there's only 4 races left, I think. And I think Russell has like a 38-point lead. So Russell is looking good in that sense. Then you have Fuoco in P12, Markelov P7, Arjun Maini. Of course, he's been in the headlines because of another person in the last few weeks. He's in P8. Alexander Albon not doing well in P13. He's been very good in qualifying, but today he has not been good. Latifi, the Force India test driver, his teammate in P14. So yeah, those are the results of qualifying for F2, and the feature race will be taking place after qualifying. And don't worry, in the race watch along, I will give you the results of the feature race and the sprint race on Sunday morning. I will give you those results, and we'll, you know, go through them and discuss them and see what you guys think of that. But enough of that. Now, let's start the Q&A. So, put your questions in below. I'll answer them for about 15 minutes, I'd say. And, yeah, so fire away on your questions for the next 15 minutes. Let's see what some of you guys are saying. That upgrade since Canada has helped them. I think you're talking about Haas. Yeah, I agree. Gasly was in the Alpha, not Leclerc. Pay attention to who's... I don't know what you... if I've accidentally put one of the drivers in the Sauber, or, you know, sorry, but yeah, it's just a typo error there. Will Ferrari dominate at Monza? They should do. They should do. I think out of Spa and Monza, Monza should be the track where they win. I don't think they're going to win both of those races. I think Mercedes will probably win at Spa, because I think Spa suits Mercedes more than Monza does. I think Ferrari will do well at Monza, but yeah, they should do well. If they don't, then it would be, I think, quite a disaster considering how fast their car is right now. Who do you support? I don't, you know, directly support anyone, but I do have my favourites. For example, my favourite team is Ferrari. My favourite driver is Max Verstappen. And also, right now, I'd have to say Charles Leclerc is becoming one of my favourites. But, yeah, I don't really have a team or a driver that I directly support. I just, at the end of the day, I don't care who wins the title or whatever. As long as we get exciting racing and a great championship battle, again, I don't care. Thoughts on Force India's current predicament? It's not good. It is not good. I think when it comes to the team at the track, they just need to continue to score points and hope that this situation with their team just gets resolved. And I think when it comes to what's happening with the team, it's difficult to say. If it is true that Lawrence Stroll has bought or is going to buy Force India, I do not think that is good for Formula 1, and I think that sets a bad precedent, because you can't let a dad who happens to be a billionaire you know, have a son that's in Formula 1. You can't just have him going around buying teams and buying places for his son to race when clearly, no disrespect, his son is not good enough to be at Force India. He's not. I don't care what anyone thinks about that. In my opinion, Lance Stroll is not good enough to be in a Force India. He's not good enough to be in F1. And I think his dad going around and buying a team basically just so his son can get in a better car is a worrying, and again just sets a bad precedent, because this then opens the door for this to happen for other billionaire dads who have racing sons, and I just don't think that is the way forward that we need to be going. Do you consider Mercedes AMG an English team? Yeah, to be honest, I do. I mean, I know they're a German company, but they're based in England. A lot of the people that are at Mercedes are British, so they're not factually a British team, but they are. Let's be honest, they're a British team at heart. The new power unit for the Ferrari customers, I've already gone through that, and it's definitely making a difference for Haas right now. We're not seeing a difference though for Sauber, so we'll see what they can do tomorrow in qualifying. Do you think Max can get his first pole? Really hope he breaks history. Fingers crossed. I don't think he will in the dry. I think in the dry it'll be Sebastian Vettel. I will get in, by the way, into my qualifying predictions during the build-up to my qualifying watch-along, which, by the way, if you're watching for the first time, tomorrow I will be doing a qualifying watch along starting at 1:30 p.m. UK time, and then a race watch along starting 1:40 p.m. UK time. So if you're new to the channel, subscribe, like, comment, and stick around for those, because I'll be doing those during the weekend. But yeah, I'll get into my predictions for qualifying during the build-up for qualifying. But I think in the dry it'll be Sebastian Vettel, but if it rains, I think it will be Max Verstappen. So he does need to pray for some rain. Formula 1 cannot afford to lose Force India, I agree. I think they've been, in terms of performance, and if you strip away all the cash that all the teams have, I think Force India have been one of the best performing teams in F1 since 2013. I think at times they've been better than Ferrari in terms of getting the best out of themselves, because even though Ferrari in the last few years have had some wins and have had all this, you know, cash, they still haven't at times done as well as they really should have. For example, 2016, 2014, 2013, when Force India, who are on a shoestring budget, have been getting podiums and been finishing in 2016 and 2017 fourth in the constructors. So yeah, I think Force India, we have to keep them. They're such a good team to have on the grid. Of course, they used to be Jordan, so we have to keep that heritage. So hopefully Formula 1 and just everyone can find a solution as quickly as possible. How do you think Ferrari suddenly got that insane speed advantage on the straights? ERS, power unit, blown rear wing. I think it's the ERS, and I think everyone has nailed it down to the ERS. I don't know how they're doing it, and I don't think anyone really knows how they're doing it, but they're getting more electrical power from their battery than Mercedes, Renault, or Honda. I don't know how they're doing that. I don't know if they've got a double battery, but the FIA, they've investigated it and found nothing wrong. So, you know, for the rival teams, just got to suck it up and try and figure out how they've done this and design something similar, I'd have to say. I agree, but having Force still in the sport is important. Yeah, I agree. When do you think Mercedes will have the quickest car again? I wouldn't be surprised if after the summer break they not dominated Spa but had the fastest car. I wouldn't be surprised, and I think Mercedes are saving an upgrade package for Spa, because if they come to Spa and they are faster than Ferrari and comfortably win the race, and maybe even do that for Monza, then they are going to put Ferrari on the back foot, and they're going to put Ferrari under a lot of pressure. So don't be surprised if Mercedes return to being the fastest car, even if it's only for 2 races. Don't be surprised if it happens, because I think they're saving up an upgrade for Spa. Are these smaller teams like Force India given the exact spec engine as the one in the Silver Arrow? If so, what accounts for the difference in performance? They're not given the same one. I think really the only difference that I've heard of is that the Mercedes power unit in the actual Mercedes Works team just has more power settings in terms of higher modes and stuff like that, and they can use those higher modes for longer. I don't think Force India and Williams are allowed to use their, you know, like for example qualifying engine mode. I don't think they're allowed to use that for very long. So yeah, there is a difference. Not a massive difference, but there's still a difference, and it's the same with the Ferrari power unit. I'm not sure if it's the same with the Renault, but it might be. Ferrari are going to own this weekend. They always sandbag on Friday, and Vettel is still top of the timesheets after FP2. Unless it rains, this will be an amazing weekend for Vettel. Well, let's wait first until qualifying, because if it rains, then I think Verstappen will get pole, and I think in the race, Red Bull will have a faster package. It will still be close, but I think Red Bull will have the faster package. Thoughts on this year's silly season? Perez to Haas, Grosjean out of the sport, Sainz to McLaren, Norris to Toro Rosso, Ocon to Renault. What do you think will happen? Well, with those rumours, I think Perez to Haas, if If Lance Stroll does go to Force India, then I think Perez will go to Haas. I don't think Grosjean will be out of the sport because despite his crashes, you have to say he has been very fast, especially in the last few races, so I don't think he'll be out of the sport. I don't know about Sainz to McLaren. I still don't believe that's going to happen. And the same with Ocon to Renault. I just don't think that is going to happen. But if Lance Stroll does go to Force India and Lawrence Stroll buys the team, then I can see why it would happen. Norris to Toro Rosso. I don't see that happening, realistically. I think if I was Lando Norris's agent, I would be bashing down Helmut Marko's door to get in that car because who would want to be in the McLaren right now? And you could argue that at times the Toro Rosso is better. So if I was Norris, I would try and get into the Toro Rosso because there's no reason right now to go to McLaren. There's no reason, I think. I checked the weather and it's supposed to rain in Budapest from 1 to 5 p.m. Is that when quali is? Quali local time is 3 p.m. and UK time is 2 p.m. So, and I've actually looked at the weather as well. It looks more likely for qualifying that it's going to rain than the race. I think in the race it will stay dry, but I think if there's going to be rain this weekend, it will be in qualifying. So hopefully that does happen. What was the worst F1 season you've seen in the 90s? I wasn't really alive in the 90s, but from the seasons I've watched, I'd probably say 92, where Williams were just so dominant. I don't think that season was really that good at all. I think all the others were good, but yeah, that season was quite poor. Who do you think will land pole? I will go through that in the build-up to my qualifying watch-along tomorrow, starting at 1:30 p.m. UK time. Do you think Alonso influenced McLaren to get rid of Honda and now they are regretting the change to the Renault engine? Honda seemed better. I think Alonso definitely influenced that decision. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And they are paying the penalty for it. I think at the end of the day, in hindsight, and of course hindsight is a wonderful thing, they should have listened to Honda and said to Honda, right, you know, tell us how you want the car to be designed around the power unit. Because at the end of the day, even though since the 2017 regs have come in, F1 is more aero-reliant, it is still an engine formula. So you have to listen. If you're, you know, if you have Honda on board, you have to listen to them and you have to ask them what they want, because they are going to be more responsible for you winning races or championships. They are, because F1 is an engine formula. So I think what they should have done is just listen to Honda, but they didn't listen to Honda. They demanded that Honda fit their power unit inside their very tightly packaged car, and that's why it was a disaster. So, yeah, McLaren just a joke, let's be honest. Would Leclerc beat Vettel? I think in 2019, if Leclerc and Vettel are teammates, I think Vettel would beat him in the first year. But I think in 2020, Leclerc would beat him. And that's no disrespect to Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian is a great driver and is quick. But I think Leclerc has the potential to be a better driver in history. I think Leclerc is more talented than Sebastian Vettel. Again, that doesn't mean Vettel was bad. He's a very good and a great racing driver. But I think Leclerc eventually, if he maintains his good performance, would beat him by 2020. I definitely think that. Do you think Kubica will get a drive next season? Few rumours that Lawrence Stroll wants him at Force India with Lance. If that's true, then it's going to happen, isn't it? Because if Lawrence buys Force India, what he says goes. So, you know, if that happens, then it'll be Kubica and Stroll, but we'll just see on that. Remember when everyone said McLaren win at Hungary? I was one of them. Oh dear. Right, I'm going to read out 3 more questions and then I'm going to end the stream because we've gone about as long as I want to. Just reading through the questions here. Thank you to everyone who's, asked questions and interacted today. Do appreciate it. Any chance of F1 ever coming to Africa? What do you think? The only chance is South Africa, I think. And it looks as though South Africa just don't want an F1 Grand Prix. I'm sure the fans there do, but I don't think the governments do. So that's sad, because that track is a good track, but it just doesn't seem we're ever going to go back. It's a race that will always be rumoured, but will never seem to go back. It's a sad situation. What do you think of Bernie Eccleston's idea of adding sprinklers to the tracks? That idea was his worst, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I know he had a rule about where drivers could legally cut corners if they went down a certain zone, I think it was. And that was very stupid, but I think that one was the worst. That is for sure. Right, I'm going to end on a question from Simon Cragland. And this is a good one, actually, so thank you for putting this one in. I know it's difficult to say, but do you think Leclerc could beat Hamilton if they were driving for the same team? Oh, that's a difficult one. Oh, that's difficult. That's such a difficult question. I think Hamilton would beat him. But it would be very close, no doubt about it. And I think if Leclerc, say, went to Mercedes, of course it's not going to happen, but if Leclerc did go to Mercedes next year in a shock move because Bottas, I don't know, retired, I'm just, making stuff up here, so ignore that. In the first half of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if Leclerc was ahead of Hamilton, because I think Lewis would be surprised of the speed of him. But I think eventually Lewis would, work his way around it and beat him. Because I think Lewis has enough talent, enough speed. And I think in wheel-to-wheel battles, I think he would have enough as well. But if, Leclerc and Vettel, I think eventually Leclerc would beat Vettel and start beating him. Because if Ricciardo can beat Vettel in a season, I think Leclerc can. So, yes, very interesting times are coming, especially for Charles Leclerc. And hopefully he does get in the Ferrari next year. Because if he does, I think people will be surprised as to how good he actually is. But let's end the stream there, guys. Thank you, guys, for coming along. It has been a pleasure to review Practice 1 and Practice 2 and answer some of you guys' questions. So thank you for that. Just to let you guys know, if you want to join the Chatter HDF1 Discord community, the link to that is down in the description. If you want to follow me on Twitter for updates about the channel, also that is in the description. And if you want to subscribe, also go to the bottom right of the screen. Subscribe there, click on the channel name, go to the channel, the description on this video, and a link to my channel will be there for you to subscribe. Don't forget to like this video, don't forget to comment down below any questions you have or what you thought of Practice 1 and Practice 2. I will be back, guys, tomorrow at 1:30 PM UK time for the qualifying watch-along. We'll do some build-up, and then together we'll watch qualifying until qualifying ends, and then later that night, we'll be doing a qualifying review, a recorded one. So stick around for that. But anyway, that's been me, Chazza HD, and I will catch all of you tomorrow afternoon.